Margot woke up in total darkness. She was shaking and rocking from side to side and realized that she was inside something that was moving. Where am I? Why am I here? Were the thoughts racing through her frantic mind? She heard some noise and heavy breathing and felt someone's presence. She was very thirsty. Her lips were dry and her tongue swollen, but Margot still managed to say, "Is anybody here? Please answer me. Don't be silent. I beg you." "Who's here?" Margot said nervously, trying to see anything in the darkness. "We are here," someone said in a trembling voice to the left of Margot. "Where am I? Where are we going?" The girl tried to clarify the situation. "We're in a van. They're taking us somewhere up in the mountains." The same voice replied. "What does it all mean?" Margot asked, barely holding back from crying because of what was happening. It was more like a bad dream than reality. The last thing she remembered was the airport at the mountain resort, the man greeting her with a sign in his hand, and the car in the parking lot he walked her to. And that was it. Then there was only darkness and unconsciousness. There were 7 other people in the van besides her, the same young scared girls like her. They didn't know much, but they weren't expecting anything good. They kept repeating the word slavery, making the ride even more frightening. Margot and the rest of the captives had 2 things in common. The first was that they were going to an unknown place in a van, against their will. And the second was that they purchased travel vouchers to the mountainous, not by themselves. Some of them, like Margot, were given the voucher by their husbands, some by their brothers, some by their friends. It's like some cheap TV show, like the Island of the Unwanted. There was the squeal of wheels, 4 seconds of weightlessness, and a terrible crash. The second time Margot woke up was in the hospital. As it turned out, their van had fallen into a ravine. The driver died at the scene of the accident, and all the others were taken to the hospital in an unconscious state. A foreign language, police questioning, a ridiculous accusation of drug trafficking, rebels taking over the police station. All this time, Margot didn't understand anything that was going on around her. She was doing what she had to do, talking to some people, going where she was told. But her mind was foggy. It was as if it wasn't happening to her. It wasn't her who was running through a strange little town. It wasn't her who was trying to stop a car on the side of the highway. It wasn't her who had been given a ride to the border by a kind local man who could barely understand her language. She remembered the way home faintly. She had no money or documents and paid with an expensive wedding ring to cross the border illegally. Finally, she was in her native country and hitched a ride to her hometown, which greeted her with cold rain and mud. Exhausted, Margot got to her apartment and fell into her bed without taking off her clothes. She slept for at least 2 days, sometimes breaking out of a deep and heavy sleep and falling asleep again. She probably could sleep much longer, but the silence was interrupted by a shrill doorbell. It was her neighbor. Kimberly quickly entered the apartment, looked around the hallway, and quietly closed the door behind her. "Hi. I haven't seen you for a while, and the day before yesterday I saw a light in your windows." And then 2 days of silence. Kimberly said quickly, looking at Margot, "So, how are you? Where have you been all this time?" "Hi," Margot said unhappily. "I'll tell you everything, but later." "And how are you doing?" she asked politely. "I have nothing new. But your life seems to have changed dramatically," the neighbor said. "I saw your husband the other day. He hinted that he wants to sell your apartment since you went abroad with your lover," Kimberly said, exhaled and sat down on the sofa waiting for an answer, staring at the confused Margot. Margot was completely shocked to hear that, and then slowly sank down onto the sofa and spoke faintly. "Kimberly, darling, I don't feel well. Let's talk later." Margot tried to say as politely as possible, "I'll visit you later and tell you everything." "But not now," she said quietly, lying down on the sofa. "Shut the door, please." Margot was lying on the sofa, trying to understand what had happened to her, and most importantly, why. She and Greg had been married for 4 years. Everything was going well. They didn't quarrel much and weren't in a hurry to have children. Her husband was a successful businessman with a brilliant reputation, and he took great care of his reputation. Rigid daily schedule, constant business meetings, and strict dress code. The only exception to his minute-by-minute schedule was Sunday. That day belonged entirely to the family. However, lately, even Sunday became just a means to maintain his reputation as a good family man. The phase of courtship with flowers and sweets passed quickly, and life went on in a smooth and scheduled way. Margot got used to it. She was already a big girl and realized that the romantic period could not last forever. Margot worked as an interior designer, which also took a lot of time and effort, but it was interesting and profitable. In general, everything was normal. But this normality was probably the reason for their estrangement from each other lately. Both of them wanted something cool, interesting, fresh, and not just normal family life. Having survived the terrible journey into the unknown, Margot had almost no doubt that her husband had given her that travel voucher not accidentally, but as a way to get rid of his boring wife without damaging his reputation. Without divorce, tears, courts, property division, and other unnecessary fuss that could affect his reputation. I understand, he must have fallen out of love with me. He's tired of me. But he could have simply filed for divorce. The confused Margot thought, but why did he do such a cruel thing to me, send me into slavery? After all, if not for the car accident, that's exactly how the mountain journey would have ended. No, I won't leave it like this. I'll find out the truth, the girl decided. I'll start tomorrow. That same day, Margot rented an apartment in the same neighborhood, warning her neighbor Kimberly that if anyone asked questions, Margot was not there, and Kimberly had not seen her. Then she dyed and cut her hair, changed her style, and bought big sunglasses like in the movies about detectives. The spying started outside her husband's office at the end of the day. He left the building as usual, an hour and a half after the end of the workday. Margot followed him. Greg didn't suspect anything and went on his route, which, as the rookie detective noted, had changed a lot recently. Hiding behind the backs of passersby, Margot followed Greg to the restaurant. Her husband went inside, where a beautiful brunette in a red dress was waiting for him. It was clear that they had known each other for a long time and that they were connected not by business relations. After dinner, the couple went to Greg's place, to the apartment near his office which he had recently bought, saying that it would save him a couple of hours for work or sleep, instead of waiting for hours in terrible traffic on the way home. Margot returned to her rented apartment and lay down on the bed hoping to fall asleep quickly, but her thoughts kept her awake. Today she found out that her husband had a mistress. But she felt nothing but indifference, and she could even continue her spying with cold blood, watching her husband kissing another woman. And now she was concerned about her feelings, or rather the absence of them. She realized that she couldn't do it without help and was going through all her friends and acquaintances in her mind. And then it struck her. A former classmate, Michael, that's who could help her. After school, they hardly ever saw each other. But Margot knew that the handsome school suitor had opened a private detective agency after graduating from law school. It was simply impossible to find a better candidate. She hurriedly found his phone number and arranged a meeting for tomorrow morning. Margot recognized him immediately. The same posture, the same messy hair, the same squint of his eyes. Michael, hello. She joyfully rushed to hug her former classmate. I'm so glad to see you. Hi. I'm glad to see you too, Michael replied, a little confused by such a warm greeting, and gently hugged his former classmate. They briefly discussed life and business, asked each other some questions, and then Margot began a serious conversation. Michael, I'm sorry, but I called you because I want to ask you for a favor, she said frankly and told her story in all the details, hiding nothing. The only thing Margot hid was her obsessive desire to take revenge. Margot, do you realize that you crossed the border illegally and are staying in the country without ID? Did you go to the police? Michael asked. I realize that. And do you realize that if I go to the police, my husband will immediately find out about me? I'll definitely report it to the police and get my passport restored. But I need some time and your help. I want to figure everything out on my own. I don't believe that my adventures are just coincidence, the girl said with such confidence in her voice that Michael only looked at her and said, "No problem, I'll help. I'll organize a stakeout. We'll take photos and videos. As for wiretapping, I'm sorry, I can't do that, it's illegal. Instead, you can try to find something out from your mutual acquaintances or from social networks." The man replied in a business-like manner. "Thanks, friend. I knew I could always count on you." Margot replied with sincere gratitude. "Don't worry, we'll figure it out. And I'll help you get your passport restored," Michael replied confidently, trying to comfort the nervous girl. Margot spent 2 days waiting anxiously for news from Michael. There were different thoughts in her head about the further development of events. After thinking about it for a long time, she knew for sure that she wanted not only to know the truth, but also to take revenge on her cheating husband and his mistress. But she didn't know how to do it yet. Her thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. She rushed to the receiver hoping that it was Michael calling. Fortunately, it was him. They agreed to meet at the same place as before. "So, did you find out much?" Margot asked impatiently. "Yes, there is interesting information about both your husband and his mistress," Michael replied proudly and began to tell her everything he could find out. Margot already knew a lot of what Michael was telling her. But she was surprised that her husband's mistress, Samantha, was a famous TV host. They had been dating for about a year, and it turned out that Samantha was the one who had ordered the trip to hell for her rival. "So he's been cheating on me for about a year now. Well, nothing can stop me now," she said obsessively. "Margot, what are you talking about? I beg you, don't do anything stupid." Michael became alarmed. He knew his classmate had always had a hot temper. "Relax. I'm not going to kill anyone," Margot joked. "I need you to find out what Greg's plans are. He has a birthday coming up, and he'll probably be celebrating it at his favorite restaurant." The deceived wife continued seriously. "Oh my goodness, Margot. I hope there will be no victims." The detective joked. "I can't promise anything," Margot stated cheerfully and added, "Let the police ask them about where and how they got such a dangerous travel voucher. And I'll only come to the party to wish him a happy birthday. Nothing more. I'll find everything out." "No problem," Michael replied. "Is that it?" "No. I also need some naughty video of this happy couple." "You know what I mean, right?" Margot voiced her request awkwardly. "Dirty revenge. I don't want to do it myself, but I know people who are good at it. They'll do the job for a reasonable price," the detective replied and hurried to say goodbye. Margot also felt uncomfortable, but the desire to take revenge on the couple who had put her through such trials was much stronger than any emotional pressure. Michael didn't let her down. As Margot assumed, Greg was going to celebrate his birthday at his favorite restaurant. She also got the naughty video. The quality was excellent, the video clearly showed their faces. Margot spent the remaining 2 days before her husband's birthday in a useful way. She visited a beauty salon, had her hair done, and bought a gorgeous red dress. It was the color of Samantha's dress when Margot saw her for the first time in the restaurant. Everything was ready. Michael had called her the day before and told her that he had spoken to the police, who were very interested in the story of the failed human trafficking. And they would even be able to contribute to an unusual birthday greeting. Margot was ready for bold action. She had a clear plan in her head and was sure she would succeed. Margot entered the restaurant 20 minutes after the last guest. She approached the bar, whispered about something with the bartender, and looked around. Greg and his brunette were sitting at the head of the table. His friends, business partners, and other wealthy and powerful people were also there. Great. He invited absolutely everyone. Everyone will appreciate the show, the deceived wife thought with satisfaction and confidently walked towards the birthday manual Is that you? Greg asked with shock and fear, trying to get up from the table. How did you get here and why? The dumbfounded husband asked. I just came to wish you a happy birthday, my love, his wife said in a gentle voice loudly. Thank you, but you shouldn't have come here, the birthday man whispered, trying to keep calm. Oh, come on, darling. I'm your beloved wife, and I couldn't miss such a celebration, Margot said with a smile, trying to speak loudly so that everyone could hear her. Besides, I wanted to thank you and your mistress for an unforgettable trip to the mountains. She looked at Samantha slyly and gestured at the TV. This is my gift to you, lovers. Enjoy. Everyone turned to the screen and looked at it. In the beginning, there was silence. Then it was replaced by whispers, followed by shouts. The noise was increasing, and Greg's important business partners were leaving the restaurant in a hurry without even saying goodbye to the birthday man. When Samantha saw the first shots of such an informative video, she rushed to the exit but was stopped by a man who was quietly standing near the door together with the detective. Samantha, please wait. We need to ask you some questions, the stranger said, showing the dumbfounded Samantha his ID card. I did it. His brilliant reputation is over, Margot said in triumph and left the restaurant feeling satisfied. She no longer cared at all why all this had happened to her. She had a bright future ahead of her, and it was up to her what it would be like.